A simple way to implement custom complex validations for our DTOs would be to create a function that will use some or all of its fields and use that to determine if the DTO is valid or not, and signaling that by using a Boolean value. Let's compare one custom implementation using custom annotations with its counterpart using AssertTrue. Let's recall what we saw in the last episode of this podcast. There, we had a look at this DTO. This DTO has two annotations, and this is the at least one, or all, or none. For the at least one annotation, the purpose was to validate our DTO against two fields, post address and street, and the idea was that at least one had to be filled in. The or all, or none annotation was responsible to make sure that these two fields, street or house number, were or both of them filled in, or none of them filled in. And then we had all of this logic that is implemented, of course, with the constraint validators and their matching annotations. But all of this, and may be quite surprising to you if you have not seen this before, can be extremely simplified by simply using two functions and annotating them with AssertTrue. And these two functions are implemented to work in the exact same way as those custom annotations. What the first function does, and let's look at it in detail, is if the street is not null, or if the post address is not null, then return true. So in other words, what this means is that if both of them are null, that means that it will return false and the validation will fail. The same can be said for the second implementation, which is street and house number or null. In this case, if street is null and house number is null, then we get true. And the same can be said if both of them are not null. Anything else, it will be false. Now, there are some rules to implement this. Our functions need to be named either with is or get. Anything else, then these annotations will not be recognized by our Spring service. Let's have a look at the running example with an implementation of a REST endpoint. This is our REST controller, and in our REST controller, we have an endpoint called asserts. The endpoint is located at 5minutes/asserts, and what it does, it receives the DTO as payload, and it validates it. And it returns the actual DTO if it goes through here and if it gets correctly validated. Let's now see how the tests are implemented and how are they working and how they are testing this. We are using WebMVC for this. And in the first test, what we are going to check is exactly if street or post address are filled in. If none of them are filled in, then our request should fail. Let's first run all the tests to see if everything is working as it should. The tests are all green, so this means that everything that we have implemented in these tests should be running okay. So now that we know that the tests are running okay, let's have a look at what more they are doing. In our tests, we are using two values. One is the object mapper for parsing operations in our tests, and the other one is typewrite maps that is used so that we can convert objects and strings directly into maps. What we need to focus now is, what about the OK result? We want to test if everything runs well. If we look at our DTO, we can immediately see that I had put here a JSON ignore. This JSON ignore is here for a specific reason, and the reason is that when we are serializing these DTOs, it will assume that these is and get are also the getters and setters for fields in our classes. So it will generate a field and we will get a JSON payload with a field called, in this case, street or post address, or in this case, street and house number or null. And the best way to show this is if I remove the JSON ignore and I run the tests now, I would expect two failed tests. And this is what I get. Please find the rest of the tests on my Git repo below. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to know how to implement extremely custom validations with Jakarta, I have made a whole video about that. And to reach it, please click on the link to your left. As a short disclaimer, I'd like to mention that I'm not associated or affiliated with any of the brands eventually shown, displayed, or mentioned in this video.